But I just paid off my student loan.
Oh,
what's up?
bam.
14 years.
Woo! Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll take it. Yes, I worked my ass off for that.
Oh, hell yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
So this close to debt free.
Nathan, do you have student debt?
I'd like a couple thousand.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
I'll pay it off my next year, maybe.
Damn.
As soon as I graduate, they're like, so,
Right.
about those student loans.
Right. Yeah, they're like fucking the mafia, dude. They come in like, so... I mean,
Mafia
I've heard...
ain't got nothing on that.
That's true.
Welcome back to Regarding Season 3, Episode 2.
This is a show about two POC.
Recommending theater in NYC.
My name is Ray Yamanuchi. I'm a playwright.
My name is Maria Paz Alegre. I'm an artist and a theater critic.
And before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, please. It really helps us, so just do what you gotta do,
It
please.
feels good.
It does. And we got two shows, and for the first time, we don't
Ever.
agree on either show. We both have differing opinions. First one is Power Strip.
Second show is This a Room?
And our guest this month is costume designer of the new show at Ars Nova, Dr. Ride's American Beach House, Melissa Ung. So stay tuned for that. Power Strip is at Lincoln Center. It's written by Sylvia Corey, directed by Tyne Raffaelli, and produced by LCT3.
A young woman's survival in a Syrian refugee camp is completely dependent on a space heater and a power strip. So I love this play. I have recommended it to numerous people. What I loved about it, I was really invested in the characters. The acting was amazing. It's LCT3, so they got budget. They were able to do some amazing designs, amazing lighting, amazing set design. But I also I was really excited to see a show that takes place in a Syrian refugee camp because I have not seen anything about that, and it's so frustrating to me. I see news reports on it, but I don't see theater. So for the first time, I was able to see a Syrian refugee story, and it was authentic. It was told by people that are from that region. It was something that they were clearly invested in, and it really meant a lot to them. So I cannot recommend this play enough.
Yeah, so I wasn't as big of a fan, let's say. I do agree with you in the sense about stories on the refugee crisis.
Or lack thereof.
Right, I mean, that's basically what it is. I just was hoping that this play would go into something a bit deeper, and not saying that this is a shallow play in any means, but I felt like the play took too many broad strokes. And some of the plot, I felt like some of the characters felt a bit stilted for my liking. Granted,
it was let's call it for what it was. It was melodramatic. There was a lot of drama, and stakes were super, super high, constantly. That being said, I didn't hate that. I didn't hate that because I feel like I'm like a half-UG, so I can't speak to a refugee camp, but it made sense to me that the stakes are really, really high, and high stakes often, a lot of drama's involved. It was a lot, granted, there was a lot of melodrama, but I didn't hate it, and I didn't hate it because I could kind of see the forest for the trees, I saw the bigger picture of what they were doing, and so maybe some things that were a little stilted, or maybe some things that were, heart beatingly in it, that was fine with me.
The most interesting dynamic or relationship in the play, in my opinion, is the one between Yasmin and her ex-boyfriend Peter, back when she was still living in Syria before the uprising and when she became a refugee. So she's dating a man who is a son of an elected official. Engaged, yeah, to a son of an elected official in Syria. And as soon as tensions start to rise in their country, that relationship also begins to deteriorate. And so those moments in the play were really, really fascinating. I actually just hope that the play could actually excavate more from that, and that's what I was sort of hoping for. But granted, it was very cinematic too. It did sort of had
flashbacks to the past.
Right. Sort of had to cover a lot, and those sort of transitions between past and present were really, really well done.
I agree with you. I think it was well done, but I'm going to disagree with you in that, that's a story that I've seen. I've seen the treatment of women in patriarchal countries. I've seen the role of Middle Eastern women. I've seen those power dynamics, family dynamics, gender dynamics before, but I haven't yet seen this. I haven't yet seen this refugee camp, this specifically Syrian refugee camp. I haven't seen it, and so it was a really big deal for me. So clearly we have very different feelings on it, but a lot of feelings, and I think it's worth going and making up your own opinion about it.
It goes until November 17th at Lincoln Center, so go check it out.
Check it out.
Is This a Room is at the Vineyard Theater. It's conceived and directed by Tina Satter, produced by Vineyard Theater and Half Straddle.
A reenactment straight from the FBI transcript of Reality Winner, the aptly named folk heroine who blew the whistle on Russian involvement in the successful election of Donald John Trump.
Oh, fuck that guy. But this show is fucking good. Well, I loved it. I really, really loved it. So, Reality Winner is a whistleblower who basically leaked to what we basically know as The Intercept documents revealing that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. And then there's a publicly available FBI transcript of her arrest. And so you sort of have to know this story going in. And it's so good. It's so like funny, very mundane and banal. That's sort of the dark humor of it. And the acting is off the charts good. The acting is
So
off
good.
the charts. Yeah,
So
and the
good.
production design is also incredible. It's just like a very, very well put together show.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. And that being said, I'm someone who tends to not, funnily enough, as a theater critic, I tend not to read the reviews before I go into a show. I don't like to know much about the show before I go in. And in this case, I was going in blind. And so because it is the reenacted transcript of an FBI interrogation, which, you know, there's a lot of banality and evil. And I was just sitting there going, look, what's happening? What are we doing? What are they talking about? This is so boring. And this is just like, wow, who are these people? Why is this play happening? And, you know, eventually it got to a place of like, oh, wait, who is this person? What's happening right now? But it took a long time to get there. And because of that, I was just confused. I was confused.
Also, this story is, because it's based on the FBI interrogation of her arrest, it doesn't really go into the whole whistle blowing. You know, you don't really get any information about the NSA or anything about the actual issue of Russian interference in the election. It's more about the power dynamic of the FBI, of like male masculinity, and their sort of very friendly yet menacing way. They basically get a confession out of you, and that's what they were doing.
Because here's the thing, knowing nothing, I thought, oh, is this a play about like a mistaken person? Is this just showing like the inability of our like FBI? Is this what this play is about? So I didn't even know if she was guilty or not. I was just, I thought it was mistaken identity for a while. I didn't know. The thing is, I feel like that's valid because she didn't know what was going on. Neither did I. I was equally confused throughout it. And so that held weight for me.
The production is also fucking brilliant.
Oh my
It's gorgeous. The set design is really simple, but it also backs up the really like cold yet very odd sort of interaction. So the set is like this just a platform in the middle of the stage. There's like an audience on the other side and with a few raised levels. But the whole thing is carpeted in this like gray rug-ish thing. And
there's textures.
it's not totally cold.
But it's
a
just
little
cold
fuzzy,
enough.
right? It's
Yeah,
cold,
it's
but
like
it's a
the
little fuzzy. It's just very odd.
Yeah. No, shout out to Parker Lutz, scenic designer. But I also want to add shout out to lighting designer Thomas Dunn and sound design Lee Kinney, because something
And
that
Sanae
was
Yamada, who did the original.
the original sound design, original music. Because it was an FBI transcript, there was a lot of redacted stuff, and so what they did, instead of just like scooting through that, there was just like these pauses, these blackouts, and like those were incredibly harrowing, incredibly compelling, and not always blackouts. Like sometimes it was just like a light change or something eerie, an eerie sound, and that was super effective.
The one thing that sort of caught my attention when I first heard about this show is the ethics of doing a show like this, which is, you know, a woman is in prison right now, and then artists sort of putting her story, or, you know, profiting off of it, you know,
exploiting, potentially.
Right, potentially exploiting, and something like that immediately set off red flags. But upon research, it seems like Reality Winner's mother is down with it, and the production has been in contact with Reality Winner herself. So you know, that's dope.
And also, I want to say that if putting her name out there, because this story should be known, I know it now, and I'm just one of the thousands of people that'll probably go see it. So.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people didn't know about it, which is pretty surprising, but maybe that's because
he lives on Twitter.
Yeah. And I also read The Intercept, so I heard about it from there. But The Intercept also caught a lot of backlash because it was because of that article that they were able to track her. And so, you know, there's, again, journalistic standards, you know. And New York Times is doing something similar, you know, recently when there was the whole whistleblower in the Trump administration for the Ukraine call. And then they were like, oh, how dare you say what position this person was in, because then they're more easy for target. Right, they can potentially be revealed and then, you know, jailed. Exactly. So these whistleblowers, you know, shout outs, you know, there's just American patriots for real. They've thrown out their whole lives to try and save the country. So shout out to you guys. Is This a Room? Is at the Vineyard Theater. It goes until November 24th, so definitely check that out.
Coming straight up from downtown, costume extraordinaire, here to make you look good on stage. Please welcome Melissa Ang.
Woo!
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome, Melissa
Welcome.
for
Thank
coming
you.
onto our
Thanks for
show.
having me.
Absolutely.
A very high-tech production.
Hey, don't make fun of the production.
That's great.
I'm loving it. That wasn't ironic.
So you are working on Dr. Ride's American Beach House at Ars Nova. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What should we expect from the play, from the costumes?
You know, it's a really beautiful play about 4 queer individuals, written by a queer playwright.
Shout out Liza.
Yeah, Liza Birkenmeyer, and directed by Katie Brooke. It's interesting because it's so fresh and different, but it also had this sort of quality to it that reminded me of like a Tennessee Williams or William Inge play. I don't want to give too much away, but just in the sort of structure of it and I don't know, there's a lot of, you know, this examination of repression of desire and how you can be stifled by the place that you're in. You know, it takes place in 1983. So, you know, thinking about what it was like to be queer then and, you know, what it's like to not have language for that. So, yeah.
How did you approach that from like a costume standpoint?
Gosh, I mean, I think, you know, it's interesting too because it's sort of been, I think Liza has set up this really interesting sort of intergenerational queer, I don't know, like community or between the 4 women that are in it, and also sort of seeing how each character interacts with their own queerness and how that is displayed or not displayed. And so for me, it was really a lot about finding the subtext there and the sort of either like clues that are deliberately hidden or peppered in, or things that are a little more explicit. And you know, I think a word that Liza and Katie used when we were discussing this process was dissonance, which I thought was really beautiful, and it just sort of figuring out like what the markers are, the little markers and telling, you know, tell signs. And, so, yeah.
You were born in Hong Kong, but you were raised in Singapore, and you went to school here in the States. Can you tell us a little about like that journey of yours?
Yeah. I mean, it's been, my family's still in Singapore. I was born in Hong Kong because my parents lived there for like the first 5 years of my life, but they're Singaporean, they're still in Singapore. And I've been in the States, I want to say about 13 years, maybe with like a 2-year gap in there.
Same, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, 13 years.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, shit.
Cheers.
I mean,
2006.
yeah, 2006. That's when I left to go to college. And the whole time, I knew I wanted to get out. Singapore is a very small, at times conservative place. And it's, still, I mean, it's different because it really shaped me into who I am. But there's still very much some censorship that goes on in the arts. At the time when I was experiencing theater, there were certain plays that were banned by local writers, or the government could come at any point and just be like, nope, you're not going on tonight, even if it was opening night. Like they could tell you an hour before, and that would be it. And so I feel like the stakes there are very different. And so like as this sort of young, angsty 18-year-old, I was like, theater is where I'm sort of finding myself. But then also I was like, I need to get out of here.
Right.
So yeah, I left and I went to college in the States, and I've sort of never looked back.
Do you feel like your multinational background or history sort of influences your costume design?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like, coming from Singapore, I have this strange experience of like being the majority there. And coming here, it took me a couple years here, like more than a couple years.
Right.
Where I was like, oh, I'm not the majority.
Right,
Your brain sort of adjusts, and it's like, it's a very interesting experience. But also, there are certain things, like I've worked on a fair amount of Asian American plays, which I love. I love working with Asian actors and directors and makers. But, there's like, I feel like even when you're working on, let's say, like, I'm ethnically Chinese, when I'm working on a Chinese play, it's like there's certain things that, like, yeah, I know, like, kind of know that because your grandmother has told you that or something. But then there's also the part that's like, no, I'm like, that's not entirely my experience.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question. Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah. Other art or artists that inspire your work?
Oh, inspire my work.
Yeah. No, this is all off the dome.
All in here.
Yeah.
No, of course. I mean, I draw inspiration from so many places.
Yeah.
I really love films. I really, I'm just thinking about my process and like what I look at. Films, sometimes fashion, but like, that's sometimes good or not. I also love watching other artists' processes. That's very fascinating to me. But in terms of films, I guess like the earliest things that influenced me, I love Wong Kar-wai's work.
Oh man, In the Mood is just incredible. It's one of my top 5 best films, man. It's so beautiful, and the soundtrack is. Can you tell me what you mean about, or go in a little bit more into depth of what you're talking about processes? Like you like watching other people's processes?
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes when you're designing or any sort of art process, it can feel so isolating and lonely, and like you're just in your own head or you're trapped in a room and you're trying to figure it out. And it actually is really like, for me, I feel like I'm still learning about how I work. But when I watch other artists talk about their work, it really inspires me because I feel like, oh yeah, we're all kind of doing this, in a similar way. I mean, there's so many, but just the two that like I can remember. I Am Pei, I watched his documentary recently, Learning from the Light, where he's commissioned to build a museum for Islamic art in Qatar. And he,
Yes, I've seen this.
and he takes you through it. And you know, I think in this documentary he's like 91. And at some point, I don't know, I think there's like some hiccup in the process, and he kind of like sighs and he looks in the camera and he's just like, I'm still learning. And I was like, you're 91. You're considered like the master of your field, you know, architecture, and you're still like acknowledging that you're still learning. And then Frank Gehry, I don't know why I'm listing architects, but Frank Gehry is like another person that I've watched his documentary, and you kind of see like how he tears things up and sticks them together in a very non-precious way, which I think can also be really helpful, because sometimes you tend to like, you know, put a lot of pressure on yourself. Yeah, I think it can feel less lonely. You realize that these greats are also figuring it out.
Design is lonely. Like it's a lonely job sometimes. So,
All right, so actually we're coming up to the end of our interview. We always ask our guests something, you know, if they can recommend something to our audience.
Definitely go and see Dr. Rye's American Beach House.
Hell yeah.
Shout it out.
Yeah, it's at the Greenwich House. Ars Nova is producing it. Written by Eliza Birkenmeyer, directed by Katie Brooke. And the cast is Susan Blomert, Marga Gomez, Kristen C., and Aaron Markey.
Thank you, Melissa, for coming on the show.
It's so good.
Her show, Dr. Rye's American Beach House, runs until November 23rd. It's at the Greenwich House. They moved downtown, West Village, so go check that out.
And how is the play?
Yes. So I didn't get to see the show. We didn't get to see the show before the interview, but I went to see it afterwards. And let me tell you, it's fire. It's fire. It's subtle, beautiful, just an incredible sort of like slice of life piece that's just, it tore me open. You have to go see it. Yeah, it's good.
And to see more of that amazing interview, please check out our stunning website, curated by Ray Yamanuchi himself.
Right here,
It shows the entire interview, and it's really worth it.
And you know what to do, guys. Just click these buttons down here somewhere.
Like, subscribe. It's so easy.
So
Look
easy.
at that.
It's
Anybody
so easy.
can do it.
There's a button somewhere near my head, near Maria. Just subscribe. Come on. Come
It
on.
helps keep the lights on.
Really does. Come on.
Bricks up. The logo floating. And happy theater watching.
Yeah. I'll see you next month.